Where does Louisville need help the most?
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, 5 days a week, covering your team every day. Now, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. The spring transfer portal window for football officially opens up tomorrow on Wednesday. We will identify and discuss what the main needs are for the Louisville Cardinals in this window. We will answer 6 total questions in this week's weekly mailbag, 3 questions per segment. The first of the 2 segments answering 3 football questions, and the final 3 questions will be surrounding the men's basketball team. So great show coming today. We haven't talked a ton about football over the past couple of months, and mainly we can blame the basketball team for being really good this year, and the offseason was really hectic for Pat Kelsey so far. I mean, it's not over yet, but things have slowed down. The spring game for football was on Friday. It was awesome to get closer and closer to football season starting in August, but offseason isn't over yet. The spring portal window officially opens up tomorrow on Wednesday, and it closes on April 25th. Now, we've already started to see some names intend to enter the portal. Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee, that whole situation. California star running back Jaden Ott has opted to go to the portal, and I would probably venture out to say that they're not going to be the only big-time names that throw themselves into the transfer portal. Some national media members think that things could get wild, and really nothing would surprise me in this new NIL and transfer portal era. But the Louisville Cardinals have some needs that they still need to address. The good thing is they have the opportunity to fill those needs with this window, and they have the scholarships to do so. How many players will they add? I don't really think you can give a concrete answer at the moment because, number one, you don't know how many more players are going to enter the portal. And number two, we don't know if Jeff Brohm is going to use all of the available scholarships. It seems like at this point there's a handful of scholarships left, definitely less than 10. I'm not sure the exact number, but the Cardinals have had 2 players enter the portal or intend to enter the portal in the past 48 to 72 hours, so that number is constantly changing. But there are 2 spots that have been needs really ever since the winter portal. The first one is defensive back. Now, I'll admit, I have already admitted that I was surprised by the defensive backs in the spring game. Rodney Johnson Jr., the transfer from Southern University, was one of the most impressive defensive backs so far through spring ball for Louisville, and he had a good performance in the spring game. Jabari Mack, the transfer from Jacksonville State, is another name to, of course, watch for. I was excited to hear true freshman Antonio Harris's name called by the PA announcer multiple times on Friday evening. Now, can't take too much away from a spring game, but awesome to see him involved. I still think that Louisville needs some more help at defensive back, more specifically cornerback, but I'm going to lump in the safety position to this need as well, because at this point, if you can go out to the portal and get a clear-cut, bona fide, immediate contributor, that could be the highest upside move that you can make, because it is the only spot to where I feel like you truly still need that standout guy. And if you could bring in, let's say, a CB1 to the mix, and then have Johnson and Mack be those second and third options, you completely change the complexity of your secondary. And it's been a secondary that has been subject to giving up big plays in the future, whether or not that was personnel or scheme issues, probably siding more so with the latter, but still, you do have to have the personnel. You're replacing Quincy Riley, you're replacing multiple big time players, and if you can add a solid cornerback to the mix, that would be huge. The same way that if you had a safety. Now, I know you got a transfer from Corey Gordon, or a transfer incoming named Corey Gordon. You got D'Angelo Hutchinson coming back. You've got some players in that safety room. I think that there are some guys that are going to step up. But again, if you can go out and in this portal window, go get a complete, ready to contribute safety, it could be huge and pay off dividends for your defense. I feel good about the front seven. I do, especially after I watched the spring game. I was like, yeah, this front seven, even though the experience and production might be there, I think that there's so much talent on the defensive line. There's so much talent on the edge. Linebacker is a spot that I'm just not worried about at all. So DB, I feel like, is need number one. If it's need number one, it's 1A, because 1B is you need a wide receiver 3. Chris Bell didn't have the best spring game, but we know what he can do. He's going to project to be one of the best receivers in the ACC. He's one of your starters. Caullin Lacy got hurt right before the season. Even when he came back, he was still a little bit injured, maybe rushed himself back to returning. He ended up redshirting, and now he's banking on a full bill of health for the 2025 season. And if he plays, there's no doubt the amount of explosiveness that you're going to have on the field in the slot. So you've got 2 starters penciled in. But outside of that, you sort of have to kind of wonder, because at this point, you're just waiting for someone to step up. JoJo Stone entered the portal. That's a name that we'll talk about in the weekly mailbag, but I don't think that he was in line to be that wide receiver 3. More so at this point, it's guys like Antonio Meeks, it's Chris Hughes, it's Jaden King, it could potentially be Sean Boykins. Like, you've got some guys that will compete for snaps, and Meeks looked really good in the spring game. The former D2 transfer came to Louisville last year, didn't really see the field much. I think that he's your sort of situational red zone target with his size and verticality and ability to high point the football. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to slide into that wide receiver 3 spot, but the Cardinals need to do whatever they can to bring in, I'll say this, at least one more receiver. You need someone that can play opposite of Chris Bell on the boundary, because you've got your guy in the slot. Caullin Lacy is going to give you that experience and that talent in the slot. Chris Bell is your X. You need another guy on the other side. If you're asking for a specific skill set, I mean, I don't care about height as long as there's some explosiveness and ability to take the top off the defense. Because if you can find someone that can stretch the field, and I do think that this is an offense that's not going to throw the ball downfield a whole ton, but it's going to be surgical. Miller Moss is really good on short routes, intermediate routes, those drop in the bucket throws. He can throw deep, but it's going to be those 10 to 20-yard throws that gets you if you're the opposing defense. And Louisville needs not only someone to step up with wide receiver 3, they need some quality depth, because Lord forbid, and knock on every bit of wood there is, if Caullin Lacy and Chris Bell were to go down, you could struggle, because the year prior, Louisville really didn't have many players that could create separation. That was an issue. And if they can go out into the portal and get a player that can fill that need and help raise the floor of the Cardinals receiving core, but also the ceiling as well. That would be huge. You kind of go process by a process of elimination. I don't think you need running back. I don't think you need quarterback. I don't think you need linebacker, defensive line, but a couple spots that you can maybe add some depth to. Tight end is a spot. Grant Hauser and Dylan Mesman have been injured. I think Jaleel Skinner is going to take a step forward, and then you have Nate Kariski. But I think you're going to be able to, have a good nucleus there. Maybe you bring in another player for depth, or the offensive line who just lost Austin Collins. Didn't really have a good performance in the spring game. Do you now go out into the portal and maybe try to get a difference maker on the interior of that line? You do have Trevante Sylvester coming back, so that's something to focus on. And then maybe it's an edge guy. I wouldn't mind going best player available. If you can bring in a talented player and just make it work and give yourself meaningful depth, because football is a very violent sport. It's a long season. You need to do what you can to give yourself good depth at every single spot. You've got the spots to do it, and you've got a really talented nucleus. It's just a matter of finding the right pieces and being able to plug them in. So I think that there still is some work to be done in the portal. I felt better about last year's team going into the spring window than I do this year's team, just because of the amount of players that they're having to replace. But still feel pretty optimistic about the season as a whole. So let's get into some football questions that you guys have. Part one of the two-part mailbag series. We'll answer 3 football questions when we come back on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electrical. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Tickets haven't gone on sale yet, but I will be using Game Time to get tickets to Game 2 of the Rockets opening round playoff series. And with Game Time, I've got complete peace of mind. The all-in pricing feature allows me to see the complete total at checkout with no surprise fees. My apology. So I'm able to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. If you want to do the same, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Cardinal fans, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Want to thank you all again for submitting some mailbag questions. 3 football, 3 men's basketball. We start with the former. How big of losses are losing JoJo Stone and Austin Collins to the transfer portal? JoJo Stone, a really talented player coming out of high school, had to deal with some injuries, but you couldn't really, debate what you saw on tape. He was really good when he played in high school. Didn't really get much of an opportunity last year, having sat behind multiple players, but decides to enter the portal. And I think it might have been because he wasn't as high up on the depth chart as he may have liked. I know there were some Louisville reporters out there that suggested that Antonio Meeks was potentially ahead of him on the depth chart. Stone operates a ton in the slot. Caullin Lacy is going to have that spot this season. So, losing him hurts the depth of the group. It removes one more potential option to be wide receiver 3. But make no mistake about it, he wasn't going to be the penciled-in wide receiver 3 that some were talking like he was going to be. In fact, I'm not even sure that he was favored to get that spot. He was going to be meaningful depth, but I think that he is going to transfer somewhere where he's going to try to play right away. I'm not sure that is going to be an SEC school like some are suggesting, but somewhere where he could play. Austin Collins, multiple-year guy at Louisville, has been a key reserve and even plug-and-play starter at times on the interior of this offensive line. Kind of a surprise here, had been injured all throughout spring ball and then enters the portal over the weekend. Probably would have been a projected starter in 2025. If not, he would have been in the 2 deep at the very worst. So just some more questions regarding the interior of the line. I think Nair Jackson is going to start at one of those interior spots. We'll see who gets the start on the other side. I think there are a couple different names that you could throw out there, but it sucks. And I'm hoping that the Cardinals are able to replace him in the spring window. Outside of Caullin, Lacy, and Chris Bell, the wide receiver position has me a little bit worried. Who are some internal wide receiver options that you are looking out for, assuming that they don't go to the portal? Well, truthfully, I do think that they're going to go to the portal, but I understand the merit of the question. Sort of along the same lines of who we just talked about, I think that Antonio Meeks is going to get every opportunity to show that he can be that wide receiver 3. And even if they do bring someone in, I think that Meeks is going to be used in certain situations. It's really just a matter of who they bring in and what role he's going to play. But I would agree there. I think that outside of Caullin, Lacy, and Chris Bell, there are more questions than answers at this point. And I would like to see a guy like Chris Hughes, Kentucky native, who was the star of the last spring game as a walk-on. I would like to see him make a potential jump this season to be able to play himself into contention for some snaps. Jaden King is also a player that we identified that could step up in that role, but there's a couple different names that you can sort of throw out there. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about who's going to make the most of their opportunities. And the past couple of years, especially in the Scott Satterfield days, this was a common theme. We really didn't know who was going to step up at times. And just sort of a question there. Jaden King, freshman from Columbus, Indiana, like I said, could step up. There's so many players that have entered the portal. My goodness. Sean Boykins, true freshman from Radcliffe, Kentucky, player for North Hardin, really fast option. Could you see a guy like Jaleel Skinner being used in certain situations? The good thing is this offense is going to begin with running the football, and the passing game will feed off of that. But you do need to get some more production in this room and add another receiver. But internal options, I think that the 3 I would look for would be Antonio Meeks, Chris Hughes, and Jaden King. Third question. Miller Moss didn't wow me like Tyler Shough did in his spring game. Do you think there will be a drop-off at quarterback play for the Cardinals? I'm going to say this with no disrespect intended for Miller Moss, because I was a huge advocate to bring him to Louisville. I'm really glad that he's here, and I think he's going to be really good for the Cardinals. Tyler Shough was fantastic. Doesn't get talked about much. I hate that Louisville wasn't able to capitalize, but you're talking about a guy who could get drafted early in the second round despite being almost as old as I am. I'm 26. I turn 27 tomorrow. Tyler Shough is a year younger than I am. He's about to potentially go in the second round of the NFL draft. That's how much talent this guy has. There's not a throw he can't make. He was that good. He was as good as advertised and even better than that. Shout out to Coach Brohm and company for doubling down on just the overall talent of this guy and saying, you know what, the injuries were freak injuries and we're going to deal with those because this guy's got the arm. He was great. You could see a drop-off. What Tyler Shough has with a live arm, Miller Moss has, on the intermediate routes. I think that Moss has a quicker internal clock. I think he has that sort of a quicker release, and it allows him to get those short routes going, to get in those intermediate routes, be surgical. I think he was the scapegoat at USC. I don't think he's a perfect quarterback, but I do think that the rushing attack probably improving, despite it being really good last year, that's going to help him out. And I trust Jeff Brohm to be able to tailor his offense around his quarterback. So, although he might not be Tyler Shough, that doesn't mean he's going to be bad. I think that Nolan Moss is going to be really good. So, got some more questions coming up, all regarding men's basketball. We'll answer them or attempt to when we come back on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. If you ever check your bank account and wonder where all your money went, like me, then you need to go to Monarch Money. It can be your personal CFO that gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on eating out. Now, I budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year. Continuing on along through the month of April, just want to give a heads up. I will continue to remind you all throughout the duration of this week. I'm going out of town actually for the majority of next week. So there's going to be some episodes next week. There won't be 5. There's probably going to be 3. Just a heads up. I'll give you more details as we get closer to that week, but I wanted to at least go ahead and put it on your radar so you don't get caught off guard. Continuing in our mailbag series, first question on the men's basketball side of things. Assuming that Cason Pryor makes it official that he's coming back to Louisville, what do you think Louisville will go at or go after? What do you think Louisville will go after Pryor commits? That was funny just to read that because I got tripped up and I think either I wrote after twice or it was sent twice. Oh, well, no issues. Thanks for the question. I don't think Louisville does much if/when Pryor announces he's coming back. I do think that Corey Calker will be a Louisville Cardinal, the JUCO guy that we've long questioned whether or not he's actually in this class. We're going to break down his game coming up over the next week or so. But I think that with Pryor committing, you only have a couple scholarships left. There's only so many minutes to go around. It wouldn't surprise me if Kelsey goes and gets one more international guy, maybe 2 international guys, and keeps a scholarship or 2 open for any type of situation in the summer where a recruitment opens up or maybe a reclassification presents itself. But I think that Louisville's sitting in a good spot to where if Pryor commits, I don't really think that you have a ton of minutes to be able to throw out there at this point. I know it's way too early, but if you had to predict right now, assuming Pryor does come back, who would lead Louisville in scoring next year? Sheesh, man, that's tough. That's really tough because last year it felt like, okay, Terrence Edwards, Cason Pryor, maybe Chucky Hepburn. Now you can make a case for like 6 players. Adrian Woolley, Ryan Conwell, Isaac McNeely, Michael Brown Jr., Cason Pryor. Who knows? I'm not going to say Javon Hadley, but I'm also not going to say Javon Hadley. I think it's down to 2 guys. I think it's either going to be Adrian Woolley or Ryan Conwell. I think they're both going to see similar minutes per night. It just depends on how quickly Woolley can translate his game to the Power Five. I think Conwell has more of a seamless transition than Woolley does. Gosh, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Conwell here. I think Ryan Conwell is going to be the leading scorer. I think that this is going to be something where Louisville doesn't have one go-to guy. They've got multiple. It's going to be a very balanced attack. Last year, he averaged 16.5 points a game for a Xavier team in a tough Big East conference. So I'm going to go with Conwell here. I think McNeely is probably going to take a little bit of a step back in points per game, but he's going to still be really effective. I don't think Michael is going to average over 15. He could, but I think he's going to be a really good facilitator. Maybe Case and Pryor is around that area because he's going to be the focal point in the front court. Or maybe it is Adrian Woolley, and he makes that huge jump between freshman and sophomore year and just has a great year. There's so many different options that you can go with, and I think that is the beauty of what Pat Kelsey has done with the portal is that he has put a really, really, really good team together on paper. And that's a tough question. So I want to ask you all this in the comments below. Let me know who you think Louisville's leading scorer is going to be next year. Should Louisville just give up and take themselves out of the Nate Ament sweepstakes? I mean, truthfully, at this point, depending on who you ask. Now, from someone that I had talked to, of course, this is secondhand information, so understand that. Someone that I had talked to said that the Cardinals hadn't fallen down the pecking order like some would suggest. Like the Cardinals are still right in the mix. Now, I still think that he chooses Duke. I have felt like he's going to choose Duke all along. I'm not going to change that stance, especially if you get Case and Pryor. Does that mean that you stop recruiting Nate Ament? Maybe, but I don't know. If you do recruit both and you somehow get both to commit, how do you even begin to distribute all those minutes? Who knows? That's why Pat Kelsey's making more than I am to make these types of decisions. But, I mean, I think that everyone's exhausted surrounding this recruitment. You know, like all the Louisville fans are just like, come on, man. I'd rather him just pick a school. And when you hear it's like it could be a week to a couple weeks, and it's like, okay, oh well, best of luck. Now, I know that this is a very important decision for the young man, and I wish him the best of luck, and I hope that he makes the right decision for himself. But Louisville fans have been just waiting on this recruitment since the late fall of 2024. Like, it's just continued to go on and on and on, and everyone's just kind of impatient. So I wouldn't be mad at Louisville for dropping out of the sweepstakes, really, because I don't think that they're going to win out for his services when it's all said and done. So it's up to Pat Kelsey and company. But that's going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.